Good evening and welcome to the Mancunian Way. We are back with another match preview. Might get a lot of these. Football every 3 days. Good evening, Rich and Ozzy. How are you, gentlemen?
Very good, thank you.
Yeah, good. Thanks, Martin.
Loving the background, Oz.
Thank you.
Loving
What
the
times of it?
background. I mean, I think Rich's background's tremendous as well. I didn't realise we were going live from art galleries. Yeah.
There you go.
Are you in the Tate Modern? London art? Australian?
No, I think I'd be in the Place Ariel in Llanystundwy or somewhere.
It's a better view than looking at him in his pool. Tell you. I'm sick, you know. Ozzy got the same WhatsApp message as well on Christmas Day.
I wasn't in there at the time. That
Oh,
makes it
sorry.
sound like it would be so much worse.
Does really, Rich?
Yes.
Quick while you're ahead.
Ozzy, we're going to bring in, and Rich, we are going to bring in our very special guest who has joined us today. He was another fellow Manchester City YouTuber who I've spoke to a couple of times. He's an absolute top blue. Really, really nice lad. Genuine blue. One of the nicest people I've had the pleasure to actually speak to on a couple of occasions. And it's lovely to have him on here on the Mancunian Way. And it is the one and only JSGC. Hello, buddy. How are you?
I'm here. Yeah, very well. Thanks, Martin. How are you?
We've got there at last.
I know we have. Took some planning, but we're here. We made it happen.
Yeah. How are you doing, mate? All good?
Yeah, all good. It's what? City are back, aren't they? Everything's good when City are back. It's been a long 6-7 weeks or so. Literally, when we were playing against Leeds, I just sat back and just smiled to myself, thinking, "This is beautiful. This is really nice to have everything back rolling again." Because I missed it. I missed it a lot.
Yeah. What we are here to obviously to get Jay on to talk about Everton as well as Ozzy and Rich. But while we've got Ozzy and Jay on, I want to just touch on last night's result because they've obviously me and Rich have waxed lyrical about the performance of last night, especially second half. But Jay, what did you think? Obviously, you did your own watch along and post match. What did you think of the game last night?
3 points is 3 points when we've been put under pressure. Newcastle had overtaken us. Arsenal were already 8 points clear. I went in thinking all I want here is 3 points. By the end of the game, we'd come away with 3 points. And focus just moves right on to Everton. In terms of the performance, created really well first half. Wasn't very clinical in front of goal, which was a little bit concerning. Obviously, all the talk at halftime was about Jack Grealish and a couple of sitters, which were missed, which I thought he showed a lot of character second half to come back and grab a couple of assists, which I'm sure will do his confidence the world of good. So second half, a little bit more clinical in front of goal. I thought we looked a little bit more vulnerable at the back, but I thought Leeds were better second half than they were first. They were very open first half. There were gaps left, right and centre. My only surprise was it took us 46 minutes to be able to break Leeds open. More clinical in the second half. Once we'd got the 3 goals, game was wrapped up. Disappointing to concede, but you've got to have something to perfect upon, which we can do against Everton.
Yeah, definitely. Just before we come to you, I should have mentioned this at the beginning. The news has broke late this evening that the legend that is Pele has sadly passed away. Obviously, it's sad. You don't ever want to see one of the greats, some say the greatest player of all time, to pass away. Obviously, I'm not old enough to have ever seen him play. I think Rich
Played, didn't you,
Rich,
Rich?
did you just see him play? And I'm actually not meaning that in a sarcastic way here. I'm not. People think I will, but I'm not.
He certainly is.
He's on mute.
He's on mute. That's how old he is.
Jay says his best stuff when he's on mute.
Yeah, no, I'm brilliant. A method actor. No, I never saw him play. I mean, he really finished playing at any level in the mid to late 70s. And I was still too young. So I guess I started supporting football just after he'd finished, where he was the figure who seemed to be universally the greatest player there'd ever been. Then a young Argentinian came along, Diego, Armando Maradona. And I think, for most of my life until the kind of, things of the last 10 years with who the greatest player is, was really that discussion of Pele versus Maradona. Pele, who did more in terms of won 3 World Cups and probably played with the better players overall than Maradona did. But won 3 World Cups and scored, I think, 1,000 goals by the end of his career. And versus Maradona, who, lived a less clean life, didn't play with as good of players, but actually created this amazing history at Napoli and with Argentina. So no, it's a very sad day, and I hope a lot of people spending all their time talking about whether Messi or Ronaldo's the greatest of all time remember that there are other players, and not just Pele and Maradona, but players who played in other
Fabio.
Eusebio, Beckenbauer, Johan Cruyff, Maldini, Lev Yashin. Just remember how many great players there have been over the last century and a half, and Pele was certainly one of those. Changed football.
I mean, the guy scored a record 1,281 goals in 1,363 appearances, and I know that's sort of been dismissed more because of his career in the US and things like that. So, but to me, I never had the pleasure of seeing him. I'm not old enough. Just caught the tail end of Maradona's career, but it is sad when you lose one of the greats. But it's a great point. We talk about Messi and Ronaldo all the time, and we don't seem to have that respect for the actual legends who came before it.
The biggest thing that Pele has always had against him is that he never came to Europe, and came to one of the clubs in Europe and did it. I think that's always going to be, sadly, the thing that will cover. I'm not saying he's not great, but I think that's the thing that people always say, that he never did it in Europe, did he? He never came. So
but not many of the great,
true.
Not many of the great Uruguay players who won 2 World Cups, and obviously not many of them in both came to Europe. Not many of those Brazil sides came to Europe. People didn't, move. Most of the Brazil side that won in 58, 60, was it 62 and 70, played in Brazil, and that was the way it was. So, and I think that's looking back with a slightly different view, in that when all the great South American players were playing in South America, it wasn't a bad thing they didn't come to Europe. But now we tend to look at it through today's lens. And I think the other thing is you look at a player like Leo Messi, who was coached by the world's most expensive coaches from the age of 8 years old, who, had everything, doctor's appointments every week to make sure he was growing properly, and a team built around him from being a kid. Pele learned to play with a tennis ball on the dirt streets outside his house in poverty. And, I think we sometimes forget just how, everything has been built around today's players from the age they're kids. They are superstars at 10. They have millions spent on them. And that wasn't the case for Pele, Maradona. It wasn't the case for some of our, like Aguero, Tevez and people didn't have that. They learned football on the streets. And I think people forget just how much players had to do to get to where they got to back in the days.
That's a great point. With Colin Bell, they've got one hell of an 11 up there at the moment. Jay, are you anything you want to mention on Pele? Obviously, you are the guest, mate.
Very sad. A legend of the game, 3 World Cups. It's unprecedented. It's not been matched. It's difficult to win 1 World Cup, never mind 3. I think he's a huge loss to the football community. So from everyone associated with the JSGC channel, we're sending all of our thoughts and well wishes, obviously, to his family and his friends. It's just a very sad time for football. Unfortunately, well before my time. But as you hear people speaking about history, and they're speaking about players that live right up to the hype and sitting right at the very top of their game, people watching football through the late 50s into the 60s and into the 70s as well. They speak about just how good a player Pele was. And obviously, you speak about generational talents. It moves on to Maradona. You head into the 90s, where we're talking about players like Cruyff, and then you get into the Messi and Ronaldo era. So we're just talking generational talents here that are just exceptional football players competing right at the very top end of their game. I did understand the point about not coming across to Europe, and you're always thinking to yourself, what happens if you don't come across to Europe? What happens to your legacy? Are you as good if you've not proven yourself in Europe? And I get that point, but I reckon when you speak in late 50s into the 60s, there's not as much money knocking around in football. So I'd say the big appeal of European football and accumulating the millions of euros and pounds, etc., with the currency, the appeal's not really there. So these South American-based players are very family orientated. You'll see that with a lot of South American football players. And if their money was on offer in Brazil and Argentina, I reckon that a lot of these South American players would choose to stay there.
Yeah, it was quite, in a way, it was quite sad this year that for the first time there wasn't a single Brazil-based player in their World Cup squad. So no one watching football of their hundreds and hundreds of thousands, millions who go every week could watch a single one of their players playing in Brazil because every single one was in Europe. And I think it was nearly the same with Argentina. I think they may have had a couple of the younger lads still based there. But I think that's actually quite sad that, a country as great as Brazil, with the crowds and the size of football it has, still can't match Europe to even have one player still playing there.
Yeah, so it's now seen as a stepping stone into the European league. Sadly.
It's just the money. It's just the money. I mean,
yeah.
City can buy a Brazil. The truth is, City buy a decent side in Brazil for probably less than half than we paid for Jack Grealish, and that's the reality of the scale of football now. The big European teams could be worth £5 billion, and the Brazil teams are worth
madness when
1% of that. Yeah.
Anyway, thoughts and commiserations to everyone here at the Mancunian way. Same as Jade for his channel, JSGC, with his family at the moment and his friends, and just a sad time for football, but we should be celebrating his career as well. Ozzy, Leeds United last night, before we jump into Everton, 3-1. What was your overall thoughts on the game, mate?
Yeah, it's difficult to add on what's already been put on really from Jay, and obviously from what we've kind of said last night. I suppose the only kind of sticking points I'd have, which is something I'd like to kind of discuss later in the chat, is kind of like what's happening with the likes of Grealish, what's happening with the likes of Calvin Phillips. These are kind of games where you'd expect those type of players to step up and be playing. I know Grealish had a better second half, but it's just that niggle is still there, and is it the price tag still around his neck that he's struggling with? Is it the position? Is it what we've talked about before? Pepe's asking him to do one thing, and really, truly, that we feel like he needs to do something different. So I'd like to kind of talk about that a little bit more later on. But for me, great result. It was a game to watch. It was difficult for City to break Leeds down. We had some clean-cut chances, which I think we could have done better with. But overall, great game, great performance. And we move on, don't we?
Yeah.
So question for you and Jay, because weren't talking about this yesterday, but one thing we talked a bit about yesterday was how at halftime everyone was just having a go at Grealish and talking about Grealish. But my feeling was that on the other wing we had a player who had worked a lot less hard than Grealish and done less.
I'm not
than
going on
Grealish.
Algerian TV again.
And I just wondered, that you've mentioned Grealish. So I just wondered why you think is it just the price tag? Is it the credits in the bank? I think Patrick said yesterday. Why is it everyone was talking about Grealish and we weren't talking about the other wing where I thought Riyad
was useless?
I thought he was much worse than Grealish. I thought Grealish
agree with you.
battled, he worked, he did everything. Riyad didn't.
I mean, I agree with you, Rich. The reason I brought him up is because I think, it's what everyone's talking about now. So I think it's something we need to discuss. But I do agree with you. I think Mahrez has been poor most, if not all, at the beginning of the season. And I feel that for Grealish, yes, it is his price tag. There's a number of people, even City fans, that are holding that against him. And I think that's unfair because it's not his fault. That's what City paid for him. That's not the fault of what Aston Villa wanted for him, So for me, the fault lies some with Grealish, but I also think that he's been played out of position. I don't believe he's a winger. I really don't. I think he's a midfielder. He's an attacking midfielder. Should be played through the middle. He's a number 10 all day. And that's the frustrating thing for me, is that that's what we need to see him play. Now, Pepper's, for me, when we've talked about this previously on the channel, that we really think that Grealish was brought in as Bernardo's replacement. Bernardo's still here. I don't think he'll be here next summer, so maybe we'll see Grealish push back into the centre. But the biggest problem for me at the moment is, and I've talked about this before on the channel, is that we've got no pacey wingers. Mahrez isn't doing the job. Foden is great player, but again, he's not a winger. He's better on the right, but Pep doesn't play him on the right enough. Why, I don't know, and we've all kind of had that discussion before. So for me, we've not replaced Sane, we've not replaced Sterling, and we've just got no pacey wingers. We've got no one bombing forward, who can crossing that goal to the likes of Haaland, or even, if Haaland's not been able to make that goal, then they can do it. And that is just something I think City are crying out for right now. I don't think it's going to be resolved in January, sadly. I think it's something for the summer to look to. But there are other positions that we need sorting out. But for me, that is one of the big issues.
We'll come to that later on. All I will sum is the only thing I will sum up with that is we don't, if you actually look at it, we don't actually have wingers on the wing.
Not anymore or before?
Mahrez and Grealish ain't wingers, neither of them.
Well, I think that's
the major problem.
That's arguable for Mahrez because he
it isn't if you watch him at Leicester. He played inside forward as a 10.
He played behind Vardy and he played behind the two strikers, didn't he?
Yeah,
he was exceptional in that
the
role.
Guy who put the ball over the top for Vardy.
He was exceptional in that role. I remember when we played against Leicester at the Etihad and they beat us. Was it 3-1? I've never seen a performance like it. It was incredible that day.
He ran the show as he was basically their Kevin De Bruyne.
Yeah, he was allowed.
He's not an actual wing. I've thought about it all day. I thought we have not got an out-and-out winger on the wing. We're asking midfielders to play wing. We do with Bernardo. This is the problem. But we'll come on to that later on, I promise you.
Yeah.
Because I do. Ozzy's desperate to get into that. Like someone just put Ozzy rant tonight. Everton. Start with you, Jay. I've had a look. Everton have not won a game since October the 22nd in the league. Mm-hmm. So that guarantees them 3 points on Saturday.
Naturally.
That's just typical City.
Naturally.
It is at New Year's Eve. Saturday, 3 p.m. We suddenly have now got a flood of 3 p.m. games on Saturday now. I'm going to throw this one at you, Jay. When you look at Manchester City this season, when we've struggled, for me, these are the teams that we've actually struggled with this year. It's not the top boys. It's the sort of middle to lower end teams. I don't know if we've took for granted. We have a bit of a lackadaisical attitude towards them. I don't know. What do you think?
Attitude comes a long way. There's been games where we've been very suspect, and we've been suspect because we've gone into that game thinking we don't need to put 100% in. And I know somewhere at the Etihad when I went on the tour, there was a little message of hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. I think that applies a lot when we go up against teams that are struggling, that we almost take our foot off the gas. And if a team wants to make a point against us, and they know exactly how to play against us, which is sit deep, balls over the top, run onto them and be clinical. And every single Premier League team, mark my words, can do that if they want to. Then Manchester City don't really have an answer to it, particularly if we're not on it on that day. And for some strange reason, it seems to be we see a good team in front of us and we think, right, we've got a point to prove ourselves. We're going to put in a really good display. We'll pick up the 3 points. Yeah, this game coming up, it's a proper banana skin because all expectations on Manchester City, no expectation onto Everton. Everton not only expecting to be beat, they're probably expecting to be beaten heavily. So Manchester City, to me, in these games that we have struggled in, it's all about how we play. And we look so much more relaxed. We look better when we score first. I've got a feeling Everton are going to come out as all guns blazing first 10 minutes to try and grab that goal. Because if they grab that goal, that's Manchester City then chasing the game, and it allows them to sit deep, start knocking balls over. But if City can find that goal, I'm confident City can win this game and win it at a canter.
Yeah, I've got to. I do look at it. The thing that worries me, and we'll come to you, Ozzy, with this, is Frank Lampard, for me, I think loses this, he loses his job.
I don't think you sack a manager after City.
Yeah, I don't think so. I can understand why you say
there was a lot of tittle-tattle talk about it after Wolves. There was a meeting at the board level after Wolves.
That Wolves result was awful. It'd surely make more sense to have sacked him in the build-up to City rather than wait for the result at the Etihad.
Yeah.
I mean, why would you sack someone after City? I think, Jermaine Beckford was asked a question on the coverage of Leeds City yesterday about March and the pressure on March from losing to City. And he said, City are probably the best footballing side in the world. They've got the best manager. They've got the best striker. And then he sort of paused and he goes, oh, yeah, and they've got the best midfielder. Why are you going to tell March that's a disastrous result or take action on the back of that? In a way, it's a free hit for anyone apart from, maybe Klopp and Ten Hag, possibly Potter at Chelsea. It's a free hit. You're not expected to get a draw. And, playing City away, it's not something you can expect. Lampard could do the best management he's done in his life and still lose that 3-0. Because the gap in quality is huge.
Yeah, just going to kind of Eustace's point, Everton at the moment are really a rotten club. I mean, structurally, they're all over the place. There are players there that have been there for I don't know how long. They've not been able to move on certain players. Frank has barely been able to bring any players of his own in. He's not had the chance to kind of sort things out there. And in honesty, who are they going to bring in to replace him to try and sort things out? They brought Frank in because they thought he's a steady pair of hands that they can give time to him and sort things out in the background. So sacking him like after City, I think he's massively harsh, and I'd be very surprised if that was to happen.
The reason why I said it was, especially with the January window about to open, I don't think Everton have a lot of money at all, because obviously we all know they've gone and spent 500 million to try and chase the dream, and that's why I never buy into this money guarantees you success nonsense, because it's been tried and tested that it doesn't. You've got to have the right, like you say, Ozzy, the right background, the right establishment behind you. It isn't just win the lottery and away you go and start spending money.
Because Everton have spent money. They've spent a lot of money. Yeah, they have. They've spent a lot of money, and they're continuing to spend a lot of money, like on the new stadium.
I just think if you remember it, I find it very similar to like someone said about the Gerrard situation. Gerrard was said everywhere he had to get that result against City, or a result, or he was out the door. He got the result against City, and then about a game or two after, he was back out the door anyway. I just think Lampard's already had his I think they've already written his P45 out.
Yeah.
I don't think they've given it to him yet.
I think Everton.
I think it's already written.
Everton remind me a lot of what City used to be like. I mean, in the 80s and the 90s, we were like Everton today. No matter what we did, who we signed, it didn't seem to work out that well. We obviously had the spell under Reed and stuff like that, and Horton when we played better football, but we really had a massive problem as a club that almost only got cleaned out by us going right down the leagues, and the club being cleaned out from, quite literally from the chairman to the ball boys, the players, everything turned over, and we almost nearly had to go bankrupt to come back. So I think for me, I think Everton are going a bit through that. I think they've got to get rid of people like Kenwright, who are undoubtedly part of the cultural problem they've got there. I think they've got to clear out a lot, and maybe they do have to go down to do that, to really
I'd like
deal
to
with
say
the
as
issue.
well, Rich, that they're the only Premier League club never to go down.
Certainly they haven't been down since before the war.
They're the
They've
only.
never been down.
They're the only inaugural members of the Premier League who've never. I don't think. I might be right. I know they've never been relegated out of the Premier League.
Yeah,
There's about 5 Premier League clubs who've never been down. So
No,
I mean,
the thing is, I like Everton.
Yeah,
I like Everton because I find him a traditional, proper football team. I always like going to Goodison because even though it is a shed of a ground now falling apart, it's a proper old-fashioned football stadium that you just takes me back to when I was a child going to all these grounds. I know they're all super stadiums now, and cheese boards and cheese rooms and everything else, and NFL and light shows and firework displays that go on behind it, and hotels as we're getting. I like Everton as a football club, but I said it last season. I do think they need to go backwards to come forwards.
Yeah, it's 70. They were last relegated. They were last relegated just after the war, or just
I think they need
they've been
to
in the
go
top
down.
flight 70 years. 70.
Yeah. I mean, you think about it. Look at what it's done for Newcastle. I mean, I know they had a bit of a yo-yo time before they got the new owners, but I mean, it kind of did them some good in some respects because they went down to the Championship, found themselves, won it, and came up. Do you know what I mean? And yes, they had a bit of difficulty, with the owner and certain managers, but they always seem to be able to come back up. And now look where they are. Do you know? So it may be that they do need this relegation, just to kind of make them as a club sort themselves out. Do you know what I mean? And go, let's stop the infighting and let's get ourselves back into the Premier League. Maybe it's the kick up the arse they need. And I'm not talking about the fans there. I'm just talking about the club itself.
Yeah, no, I get that. I don't think they'll get that till they get the owner out, sadly. Funnily enough, Manchester City are unbeaten in the past 11 home league games against Everton.
We haven't lost them since 2017. Yeah. I think it's the last time
we've been beaten in the last 11 home league games. Lost the last 4 in a row. Yeah. Before this, believe it or not, Everton used to be that team that used to come to the Etihad and did well.
That was David Moyes.
Yeah, no, but they did, didn't they? I always remember Wayne Rooney scoring, and that one when they got the one each in the Centurion season.
They used to kick us off the park when Moyes was there.
Yeah,
Everton used to bully us, and I remember many games thinking, "Oh, we'll do well. We got better players than them," and then they'd just come and they'd bully us, and they'd win 1-0, 2-1, 2-0.
Yeah, but, well, like Jas said, Kale used to love scoring against us. Tim Kale, lovely. He used to love headers all the time. Jeg,
yes.
Have Everton got any chance in this game if City turn up?
And
have the Reds screwed on, like you said early on, have the right attitude.
I wrote my preview out just before I came live. Took me half an hour.
I don't want to give any spoilers away.
No, I was just trying to get a real feel for Everton and where the dangers are, how they can approach this game, how do they come to the Etihad, how do they get anything from this game. They just seem so shot on confidence, and I literally the only way I see Everton making anything happen is if they score first, because I think if City score first and they score early, I think the heads will drop. I think the fans will turn very quickly on them, is the position that they find themselves in. So I think if City score first, I can see City going on to score 4, 5, 6, and the rest potentially. I just don't see how Everton...
Nice.
I don't see how Everton take anything from this game, if I'm completely honest. City turn up. There's not many teams that can compete with us. I think defensively, they're not that good. In attack, they're not that good. McNeil seems to always do all right when he's playing against us. Could be maybe a player to look out for on the left-hand side.
This is now being clipped, and someone's going to come back when they beat us 1-0.
I don't really see where other bits of the dangers are.
Well,
I'm not sure.
Idris Gueye breaking someone's leg. Didn't he get?
Don't play Haaland in KDB then. Leave them out.
He got sent off for PSG, didn't he? Last time when we played them in the Champions League last year, was it the year before? I remember he went in with an absolutely awful.
Yeah, I don't remember. He played a lot.
Yeah,
last year. No, I know he did.
Maybe it was the year before. He did a savage, savage attack on City.
Was it when we played them in the semi-final?
Yeah.
I'm trying. It's either that or when we had them in the group stage one time, and he did. I do remember that tackle. I can't remember if it was a semi-final or a group stage game.
Yeah, it was about 5 seconds different to the ball, and studs up.
So I mean, Everton's main attacking threat, is Calvert-Lewin, and obviously he's injured. So, is
he injured again?
Yeah.
Is he ever fit?
Well, that's what I'd say. They've just had no luck with him, have they? Yeah. He was injured most of last season. He hasn't come back. It's just, he was, talked about him being moved last summer, weren't they? If he'd have been fit. There are a lot of Premier League teams looking at him. I think United were looking at him. I think Spurs were looking at him. And he's not come back. And I think Townsend is also out for them. I mean, I know he's a lot older now, but, he can still be quite an attacking threat. And I think he's going to be missing for them as well. So.
Have they still got Anthony Gordon?
On the right wing.
Yeah, he'll probably play. I think
he's possibly the oldie. He's probably their danger man.
Yeah.
For us.
I think it's going to be McNeil on the left and Morpay going up top, and then Gordon on the right is what I'm expecting to see from them. I won't be surprised to see Morpay potentially miss out, and they might go over an extra midfielder in favour of being overrun in midfield. But
the way I look at it is, when I look at any teams who play City, like you said, they're either they come and have a go, and they have a set on them, and they go, right, we're going to attack City, and that's when City can sometimes have a bit of a wobble. Because listen, when we commit, we commit 7 and 8 at the same time, and that's when the gaps come. If you can get that break, like Liverpool showed in the Carabao Cup, when we all commit, them gaps are there to expose. But it's whether Everton have that set on them to go and do that. I can quite easily just Lampard saying to him, I'm sticking an 8-9 man wall here. You can stand on the halfway line and just let them. And the problem is with that, once that first goal goes in, like you said, Jay, that tactic's
game plan's
done.
Yep.
You finish, as Leeds saw last night. Yeah. Leeds had no intention to try and have a goal last night. Their intention was keep it 0-0 for as long as we can and pinch it.
Yeah.
And it took them. I made a comment yesterday. It was 3-0 up before Leeds decided to go and actually have a pop at us. And when they had a pop at us, I didn't think they looked too bad. And I was just thinking to myself, why did they not do this first 10 minutes instead of letting City create a couple of really good opportunities? I mean, after, was it 46 seconds, Haaland had that great opportunity. My only surprise, they didn't put it in the back of the net. I didn't get Leeds' approach yesterday. And I've got a feeling that Everton's approach is going to be something similar to Leeds, which is hope rather than actually doing something about it and having a go like Brentford did, for example, at us, who showed no fear and just thought, you know what, our assets are attacking, working the ball, give it to Tony. He's a good finisher, get him in the area, he'll put the ball in the back of the net. And that's exactly what he did.
Yeah. And even though, you know, if he gets found guilty, I'd like that game replayed. As Rich or Ozzy, one of them two said it. Do we get that game replayed? Probably
No,
not.
but if they replayed that game, they'd have to replay beating United 4-0. And that was so funny.
True. Yeah.
That was so funny. It's almost worth us winning the league by 3 fewer points to keep that intact.
Have you heard ya? Jay's having us slapping him 6 and 7. You're having us, we can drop 3 points and win the league, you know.
Well, we've already dropped them, to be fair.
What's
We haven't got
happening
much
to the
choice.
fan base? You're all too optimistic here. What's going on? Okay, let's go on to the team lineup. Obviously, last night, I won't say meltdown. There was a mini shock at the starting 11. Everyone was like, where's Walker? Where's Cancelo? Where's Foden? Where's this? Where's that? Are we expecting changes again going into this game on Saturday?
Just before I talk about a change, I would like to talk about a player that does he actually deserve to be dropped? And that's Rico Lewis. You know, I thought he played really well. And does he deserve to be dropped, in all honesty? Because, you know, as much as I'd like to see Kyle Walker back, you know, for me, Rico Lewis barely did very little wrong. I think he even did some absolutely brilliant, you know, display. He could have, you know, Grealish could have got a goal from the cross he put in if Grealish hadn't have skied it. So for me, I mean, I think that's the first question that needs to be asked before like other changes. Is that I'd like to ask you all, like, do you think Rico Lewis deserves to start? Because I think he does.
When you play in the same position as the best right back in world football, which Kyle Walker is and has been for 5 years, I think, and when you play like Rico does, I think you have to accept that when it really matters, Kyle Walker's going to play. I mean, L'Equipe named their team of 22 this week. Kyle Walker was in that team. L'Equipe, one of the best football publications in the world, saying, you know, he is head and shoulders the best defensive right back on the planet. He's the player who can keep Mbappe quiet when no one else seems to. So I think Rico Lewis has been absolutely superb, but we are talking about him going up against a legend of modern City for his place, who, if he is fit, is, I think, still arguably the best right back on the planet. So, and I think there's another part to this, is that Rico Lewis and Cancelo can't play in the full team. So if you keep Rico Lewis in the team, Pep's also going to have to keep Cancelo out the side, because there is no Rico Lewis plays going up, slotting into midfield, Fabian Delph style, which means we need 3 centre-backs. So therefore, Ake's got to play left-back. So Pep's got to make a call. Is he going to go with Walker and Cancelo, or is he going to go with Lewis and Ake? He probably wants... The only thing I don't know is why Laporte didn't play at Leeds. That worried me, because Pep never likes playing 2 right-footed centre-backs.
I think they're saving him for Everton.
Yeah, I hope so, because, you know, so whilst I think Rico Lewis clearly doesn't deserve to get dropped, Kyle Walker doesn't deserve to be on the bench. And that is the reality of it. And I hope that, you know, we play Walker less and don't overplay him this season, because Walker's injuries last season, I think, cost us a Champions League. You know, with him on the pitch against Madrid and with him not on the pitch against Madrid, we were 2 different sides. So for me, Walker comes back in, but Rico Lewis definitely plays against Chelsea in the FA Cup, and we keep Walker only playing about, you know, half to 2/3 of the games, and Rico Lewis gets to play the other third, and he deserves to at the moment if he keeps his form.
Jay, what do you think?
I think the most difficult part of City's squad selection at the moment is sharpness. We've had a lot of players come back from the World Cup, and because of that, Rico Lewis has really took his opportunity with Cancelo and Walker having a rest that he's come in and given a real selection headache to Pep. I think for this game coming up against Everton, it's important to get Cancelo and Walker on the pitch, starting minutes under their belt, so they keep that sharpness about them. We've got lots of important games coming up. We've got Chelsea to play twice. We've got United coming up. We've got Spurs coming up. So we're going to be needing Kyle Walker and João Cancelo for these big games. So it's important that Rico Lewis gets game time, that he gets a reward for his fine form, but we also find a happy balance of keeping Cancelo and Kyle Walker sharp at the same time. And as mentioned just then, I think with Rico Lewis, I'd be resting him for this game against Everton to get Walker and Cancelo minutes under their belts, and then I'd assess a game for Chelsea away and who we think should start in that one. And then if Lewis ends up not featuring in Everton or against Chelsea in the Premier League, I'd give him the full 90 minutes in the cup and assess a game from there. I think it's important that we just assess the fatigue of the players game after game after game and make a team selection on that. But I think when you sign for Manchester City, no matter who you are, you do have to accept, other than Erling Haaland right now, you're a squad player who at some point you are going to get rotated. And that just comes from the high quality that Manchester City have in their squad. I do think we've got a little way of appeasing Kyle Walker for some minutes, though. I'm not sure what everyone else's thoughts are, but when we go with 3 at the back, I'm not real keen on John Stones playing at the right side as centre-back. I personally think when we've got teams attacking our high line, I think he's a bit slow. And I think if we're going to go with a back 3, I'd like to see Kyle Walker at the right side as centre-back, because if his job is to keep a player quiet and we've got a quick left winger to deal with, such as upcoming Spurs game like Heung-min Son, for example, you can play Kyle Walker and say, your job today is to man mark him and make sure he doesn't see any of that ball. He doesn't get within a yard past you, and that's his job.
Yeah, totally agree. So I think also that's a way of extending Kyle's career as well.
And I think it's also a way. Yeah, I think you get more out of Stones if you play him in the middle in that formation as well, because he's allowed a bit more freedom to pass and dictate the game. And I think, Stones and Laporte head and shoulders offer us an attacking threat from defence with their passing and their breaking the lines that the other centre-backs don't to the same extent. So, and Walker's done that for England as well. I mean, one of the few things Southgate has actually done well is actually generally get, good form out of Stones and Walker. And that's Walker often playing that right centre-back with Trippier outside him.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Rico Lewis is going to be a wonderful player. And like I said last night, I think we're going to look at it as he saves us money. We don't need to go and buy right now a Walker replacement. It's there. But I think you've also got to remember the kid is still young and we've got to baby step him at the same time. There's a big difference. Like you said last night, would you play Rico Lewis in the Champions League final if it was next week? No, you wouldn't. You go on with Kyle Walker.
Yeah.
You've got to go. He's a brilliant, and listen, what I loved about him last night is that he played like a double 6 to allow Rodri more room to go. And
he played like he played like a 25-year-old as well. He doesn't play
he
like
was barking orders out. He was rollicking a Kanji at one point last night, which I love to see. But I think we've just got to take our time with him, enjoy him, and we've also got to realise he's basically bypassed the EDS. He played a very, very handful of EDS games. He was captain, was it under 18s? And sort of played a couple of games for EDS and has literally leapfrogged that into the first team.
Yeah. And
there will be a time when he struggles.
And we have to drop players who don't deserve to be dropped. I mean, Diaz, I don't think Stones, Diaz, Ake, Laporte, they've all been dropped this year. And I don't think any of them have deserved to be dropped this year. We see it when Bernardo or De Bruyne gets rested. They don't deserve to be there. Alvarez deserves to be playing. So we're going to have 5 or 6 players who deserve to be playing on the bench most weeks.
I mean, I hope that answers the question, I know it was a long-winded answers there. Jay, are we going to see a complete rotation around? Because obviously these games are now every 3 days. We're about to hit fixtures galore. Is this just going to be rotate, and keep it as fresh as we can?
Other than the regular players who seem to keep themselves fit and can do 3 games in a week. So I'm talking Haaland's proved that he's up to that at the moment. I have a bit of concern about his injury record, but he's just too good to not be starting in any game. And Rodri seems to be like a machine that seems to just be able to play 60 games in a season. I'd say other than them two, I think everybody else at some point over the next week will be rotated. We've got a nearly fully fit squad. We've got Alvarez coming back in the new year, so it's just Ruben Diaz that's out injured, and we're not exactly short of centre backs. We've got Akanji, we've got John Stones, Emerick Laporte, Nathan Ake, all as really good options. Kyle Walker can cover there.
I honestly think Akanji needs a rest.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think he's sounds really harsh, but I'd say over the last few games that he's played for City, he's showed. He showed that he's more of a 5th choice centre back at Manchester City after having a really good start at City. I think just having a little rest could do him the world of good. That it'll help just keep him fresh, because he's been playing every game for Switzerland at the World Cup. Has a couple of weeks back, comes straight back in. He's in the squad against Liverpool. He's in the squad against Leeds. So we've got the squad there. We may as well use it.
It's like blew out today. Bernardo's now due to start. I don't want to see Ilkay Gundogan anywhere near this 11 on Saturday for me. No. The guy, let him rest. Let him rest.
I think I can see us rotating that midfield. I can see potentially, if they wanted to give a rest to both De Bruyne and Ilkay Gundogan, going potentially with Rodri alongside Calvin Phillips. I mean, Calvin Phillips has had no minutes for us, so we need to see what he can do. I think this game might just be the perfect game for Calvin Phillips. If he's not going to start in this game, certainly give him 20, 30 minutes at the end just to showcase what he can do.
Yeah, because Pep says he's back and he's sexy now. So
he's sexy now. He's in shape.
He's gone
from 6 packs back.
Yeah. He's gone from being fatty to being sexy.
You know what?
Fat is a new sexy.
I do get worried about Pep, because he goes A to Z. I've got John Stones has got big balls and everyone else. Calvin Phillips is now sexy. Why can't a manager just go, he's ready, he's fit, he's done as up to. Right, come on, Pep.
Yeah.
I mean, I love it, but I absolutely love the way he gets behind him. But he does confuse. I found it funny what they were singing to Calvin last night, the Leeds fans. And so, he took it all in good jest as well. Which was lovely. But we need to see Calvin on Saturday. I'm desperate to see him.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's one thing that, it's one thing, I'll probably slightly disagree with you, Jay, on Rodri, is that I think him being overplayed 2 years ago cost us dear in the Champions League, because he got knackered and he lost form. So I think he does need 10, 20 games off in the season to
10, 20?
I think
that's a bit much.
Yeah, I think we do need Phillips, giving Rodri some rest. And let's not forget, it's not just games every 3 days. In January, we've got United, we've got Spurs, we've got Chelsea. So we've got 3 really big games coming up in the league in January, as well as FA Cup and other league games, and probably 2 Carling or Carabao Cup games. So we've got some really big games. So Pep will have to at some point start to be thinking of his rotation. How am I going to get my best 11? And I think this is where we'll see what we think our best 11 is against Tottenham, against Chelsea, against United, because I don't think we can afford anything other than 100% in those games. And I think that will start to show us who he thinks his best 11 is this season. And rotation will be based around those games. So we'll have to be playing, if assuming everyone's fit, the Lewises and the Kanjis and players who maybe aren't in that first choice 11 are going to have to play against Chelsea in the Cup, probably against Southampton, probably against Wolves, because we need our best team out in some really big games coming.
Blue Out says easy 3 games. Well, United is quite easy. I'm joking before anyone starts saying I'm not.
United and Chelsea might be, but bloody Spurs never seems to be.
No,
I think Laporte comes back. I do think we'll probably see Stones and Laporte back together again on Saturday. Probably Cancelo back to left back, Walker back to right back. I think we'll rotate that way around.
I think we'll probably see. I think we'll probably might even see Grealish and Mahrez start. If I'm honest,
I don't think Mahrez. I think he'll stick by Grealish. I think all the talk and everything, and how he fought in the second half, I can see Grealish starting, but I don't think Mahrez will start.
Okay, while we're on that, then, how long have you got, Jay? I know you haven't got too long left.
Mate, I've got all the time in the world. I'm not in work tomorrow.
I just want to. we'll come to it because obviously, we've talked about it a bit. The Jack Grealish conundrum. As Ozzy said. And I don't know how to put this without sounding so. Listen, there's no one been a bigger supporter of Jack Grealish than me. I have sat and I have died on every single hill I can get on to support the guy. I think the price tag to judge him on is very unfair because it wasn't the guy's fault. Because Erling Haaland is not a £50 million striker. The open market, you're at 150, 200 million. It's just, it was a release clause. It was set. I think if you're going to slag off the price, you speak to the City board. You don't go at Jack. I think where he's been played is very unfair because he's not a left winger. But you can't miss gilt-edged chances like he did last night of open nets 4 yards in front of goal at the same time. But he was amazing second half. But isn't it funny how he was better second half when he went more central? That's just not a coincidence for me.
Yeah, I think there were a couple of things last night, Martin. One, he moved slightly more central. Two, once Leeds had conceded, they were not double teaming quite as much. If you watch most of that first half, whenever Grealish got the ball, he had 2 Leeds players on him, right on him.
double, triple teaming him at times, mate.
And then he turned around and he passed it backwards, and so I think in many ways it was going slightly more central. It was also Leeds, being a bit more attacking, and also Leeds tiring. Watch Leeds last, Alan Road last season. They pressed and they pushed and they were so aggressive for 40 minutes against City. But once they start tiring, they're just half a yard slower, and then that enables City to pass quickly and really play around them. And I think that's one of Leeds' problems. I think Leeds so often look good and then lose because they just can't keep that pace going and they fall off.
Jay, where are you at with Grealish? Because he's been slated by every member of the City fan base so far.
I thought he had a really good game yesterday. He missed the sitters, which was very frustrating. And it was frustrating because they were, at the time, at a very important point of the game where we hadn't found that opening goal. Had City been 2-3-0 up, I don't think we'd be having any discussions about it because the goals have already been found and it is of no importance. But his movement first half, I thought was very good to get himself into them positions again. Was brilliant. He's doing everything right. It's just when it comes to that actual moment of putting the ball into the back of the net, it just wasn't there yesterday. And he needed to be mentally strong second half, and he was. Got himself a couple of assists, and I think Jack Grealish now needs to run a mile with them 2 assists and think to himself, actually, I had a really good game. If I start against Everton, I'm going to go out there, I'm going to get more assists. And if the opportunity comes where I'm going to put the ball in the back of the net, he needs to go out there and show that he's got the quality and he can do that. And he can. He was a brilliant player at Aston Villa. Absolutely brilliant player. It did help that he had the freedom of Aston Villa to do whatever the hell he wanted to do. He doesn't have that at Manchester City. You've got to be happy under Pep Guardiola to be starting wherever he tells you to start. And when you get told you're starting there, you've just got to do everything you can to adapt and just keep trying hard. And you've got to listen to the coaches. You listen to the coaches. They'll take that on board. If he applies that to his game, then I think he'll be absolutely fine. I think the biggest problem with Jack Grealish, you cannot escape away from £100 million. You cannot escape past it. Everyone's always going to look at him and say he's the £100 million player, so he has to perform, he has to deliver. And I think mentally that sets you back. You're at a disadvantage because it's a massive price tag. And I think it's helping Erling Haaland. We didn't sign him for as much, so the expectation, it's still there, but the price tag expectation is not. And it looks like you've got yourself a bargain. If we'd spent £200 million to bring Erling Haaland in, you'd be expecting 20 goals from 14 Premier League games that he's scored so far. And it'd be a different ball game in terms of pressure. So with Jack Grealish, it's kind of going the opposite way. The price tag's there, and he just needs something to be able to show for that. And I think fans are always just going to get onto his back, no matter if he scores a few goals or gets a few assists. To me, almost getting a sense of Raheem Sterling syndrome here, where you need a player to pick on. So you pick on the player that actually is doing very well, because Sterling's movement was brilliant. He was great at getting in them brilliant positions. Just his putting the ball in the back of the net wasn't his forte. And it seems like that's the same with Jack Grealish.
Yeah, and I think it's not just, the point about them getting cramped up on the left wing. I mean, we've seen Foden, and Foden, I think, is, we all think one of the best young players in world football. He's had games where he's been on the left wing and it's kind of stamped the individuality, stamped his creativity out, because he's hugging the left wing and Cancelo's playing 2 meters from him. And so what are they doing? So I think Grealish isn't the only one who's suffered that left wing syndrome this season. I think, we've been a bit frustrated with Foden getting left wing.
I also think Bernardo's had the same on the right, Rich.
Yeah. I think, I think that's quite a tricky
But it goes
position
back to your point, though, doesn't it, Martin, that we don't actually have any wingers.
That's Pep, though. Pep doesn't play players in positions.
Is
Never
it
has
Pep?
done. We've not had a left back for God knows how long.
Yeah. Pep never.
Pep barely.
Yeah, but I mean, we say that that's Pep, but we could also say that for 2 seasons we didn't have a striker, and we were all saying, well, this is Pep. He can play any player up front or in the false 9. So is it that he's putting players in because he hasn't found the right winger yet? I mean, we had Leroy Sané, we had Raheem Sterling. These were out-and-out wingers who are now gone. We haven't really replaced.
But Pep never. I mean, he didn't really have wingers at Barca. He played number 9s like David Villa and Samuel Eto'o and players like that out on the winger. But at Barca,
but he did bring in the likes of Leroy Sané, and you could argue he probably brought in the likes of Sterling as well. I mean, I know Sterling arrived before Pep, but we know there was talk. So
yeah,
but I think what I'm saying.
Yeah. You should say this: has it been worth the amount we spent on him? You could throw that right back to Darwin Núñez at the 80-odd million with add-ons. He's not worth that. But I think the price tag is not something you throw at Jack. Each player is different. Some players, excuse my French, you bollock to get the best out of them. Other players need an arm round the shoulder and a cuddle and properly managed. And Jack looks like the guy who needs that cuddle and the arm around the shoulder.
Can I play devil's advocate just for a second? I'm just going to pick up on Yusuf's point. Has he been worth the price tag, though? Forget about what you've just said, Martin, and I agree with you, but has he been worth it to the club? Has he been worth the amount of money that was spent on him?
But then I would go to the club.
Well, that's what I'm saying. We needed to have a go at the club, really, because this was the decision by the club and by Pep. Because Pep wouldn't have wanted him if he didn't want him. So, and for me, we've all said he's playing out of position. So, whose fault is it? Do you know what I mean? Because this amount of money was spent. It's the most amount of money that City have ever spent on one player. It broke
Yeah.
the British
I-
transport.
I think it gets quite hard when you just look at individual players like that. I mean, is he worth it? Well, if you looked at it strictly monetarily, could we sell him for more than that now? No. Could we sell him for 4/5 of it? Probably not. So strictly, no, he's not been worth it when you compared to other players. But really, City will sign players, and if we win the league, they probably think it's money well spent, even if some players were better value than others.
Even if
And
you're
you know,
carrying a player, though, Rich.
but I don't think I don't think it's fair
Well,
to say we're
that's
carrying him.
You're
I
not,
don't
we're
think we're
not
carrying him.
at all.
I think he's been 3 times the player Mahrez has this season.
Bang on.
And Patrick did say it yesterday. Mahrez has had some very good games for City. He's got a lot of credits in the bank, and therefore he's not being judged as harshly as Grealish. But if you look at this season, Grealish has played something like 24 games, and we've lost 1 game, and we've won about 22. I think
we haven't dropped 1
yeah,
point.
I think out of all our players in our squad, Grealish has got the highest win record percentage this season. So Pep's looking at that, and if he's seeing he picks Grealish, we win. He's not seeing we pick Grealish and he's frustrated me in these things. So they look at the stats, they look at the numbers. So I think probably Grealish, if you actually look at the games he plays in and the results, is probably a lot better than we think. And I think because of the 100 million, it's all the conversation. But for me, the conversation, Foden hasn't been at his best a lot of part of this season. Whilst I still reckon he's a far better player than Grealish, Mahrez has been a lot worse than Grealish this season. There are other conversations. I think Alvarez should have played more even before his World Cup, because I thought he looked great and offered something different in terms of energy and pace and everything to other forwards. So I think there are other conversations, and we always come back to this Jack Grealish conversation, but there are other conversations.
I think
that need to be had.
I just think, I don't know what you think, Jay. Do you think he's becoming a bit of a scapegoat? Like the easy target.
Yeah, he's easy to have a go at, just for how he plays. And you just get keep reverting back to the price tag. Yeah, if you're looking at the important moments and you need that individual quality to make the difference between turning a loss into a draw or a draw into a win, you're going to be looking at who you spent that money on. And Jack Grealish sits right at the top of that tree because he was the most expensive player. So if he's not had a great game and hasn't made any difference, you automatically revert then to who's not made a difference, and you'll automatically go at Jack Grealish because we spent so much money on him. And it's not Jack Grealish's fault that we spent so much money on him. I think it's just all about how to, as you were saying before, how to manage and get the best out of Jack Grealish. I have thought to myself several times in the last season and a half that there's been times where I thought to myself, is Jack Grealish right for Manchester City? Because some games he just goes missing. He isn't what Manchester City are looking for. He definitely has the quality about him. I've seen it at Aston Villa. I've seen it in glimpses at times at Manchester City as well. Not as much as what I was hoping to be able to see for the money that we've spent. But there's no doubting he does have the quality there. It's all about trying to find the games that suit Jack Grealish and how we can get the best out of him. And whilst Pep Guardiola likes players to be able to adapt to his position, I think there's got to be a bit of leeway from the coaches to adapt to the player to be able to get the best out of these individual players. Because when it gets down to the nitty-gritty of these important games, it's going to be defined by very fine margins, and you've got to have your best players on it in them important moments. And we'll soon get our answer, I'm sure, at the end of the season as to whether Jack Grealish is of that quality that Manchester City are looking for. And every time I've done my transfer videos, I've always spoken about City signing players. I can't give a full assessment until they've done 2 seasons at City and they're fully adapted to the squad, they've adapted to the coaches, and they've adapted to Pep. But Jack Grealish's time in the summer is up. That's 2 seasons I can give a fair assessment. I think he's a good player. I think Manchester City need to be doing more, though, to get more out of Jack Grealish. Because at the end of the day, he's in the Manchester City squad to score goals and get assists.
Yeah,
sorry, go on, Rich.
I was going to say, I sometimes wonder if he's ever at training, because you turn on City TV, he's working part-time as a nurse, an Amazon driver, a kit man, helping out, training the kids. I mean, there seems to be some element that he's the figurehead for City Plus to get in the media with feel-good stories. And then
He's
when
Mr.
he's on
Nice
the pitch,
Guy, isn't he?
Yeah, when he's on the pitch, he spends most of the time winding up the opposition. So I sometimes wonder, whether the marketing department signed him, or whether Pep signed him to bring in some arse into the team.
Before Haaland this season, our record shirt sales before Haaland was Jack Grealish.
Yeah. If you have a walk around the Etihad, when I went to Wembley as well, all the kids are having the Jack Grealish hairstyles and everything.
Yeah.
So it's obviously the figurehead there. I think how City have managed him with his PR campaign has been nothing short of brilliant. If you cast your mind back to when he was at Aston Villa, I seem to remember at least 2 counts, might even be 3, of him doing stupid things like drink driving and things like that. But whilst he's been at City, I've not heard anything about that.
No, he has. He's told, and for me, I think the £100 million unfair, because I don't think it was all for footballing reasons on the field. I think some of that is off the field to gain money back, sponsorships, commercialization, shirts, Gucci, everything that is involved, because that's the very same way Beckham was. I'm not saying it, but to me, I don't think you will see Jack Grealish at his best until he's in the midfield, because I will die on this hill. I think he was signed because they thought Bernardo was gone. I will die on this hill. I think he was the Bernardo replacement, and Bernardo didn't go.
Yeah, we've said that a few times over on the channel. Yeah. We've said it a few times, haven't we? That is what I think the ultimate plan was, is that Bernardo was pretty much out the door at one stage. It was just that no club could come in for him at the price tag City wanted. So,
and maybe his personality and all that kind of helps and saves him as well, because the fact is, you do get a lot of City fans who will say, Jack Grealish, lovely lad, but then they'll say something. So whereas, say, Sterling was an awkward bloke, and not naturally but Jack Grealish does seem to have affinity with the other players, with the fans, with the manager. Everyone seems to like him. It's just he's just got to produce the same output. I was just watching on City TV this week, Emerick Laporte, who is a bit the opposite. Even his parents say he's a bit, grumpy and awkward. So it's kind of it was kind of funny, the different personalities and how that affects the supporters.
Because, do you know what? We can all. I think Jack Grealish, as Jay said, is he just going to go on and on? Because he had 2 assists last night, and all I'm seeing City fans talking about are the misses in the first half. The guy can't catch a damn break, and I think Grealish lives on social media. We all know this.
Yeah.
He's reading everything that every City fan is putting. That will kill his confidence. When you keep reading every day, waste, get out, what you doing, blah, blah, blah. That would kill me. I'd just go, forget this. I'm not, there's nothing. I mean, look, the way he celebrated an assist. I've seen players score goals not celebrate like that. The outpour of emotion from him was unreal.
Yeah,
that is a guy with the weight of 100 million on his shoulders, and he knows it. But as someone said in the chat, Pep keeps saying he's doing exactly as I keep telling him to do.
Yeah, no,
Does he need to score more?
Yeah.
Yes. Does he need to assist more? Yes.
Yeah, he's obsessed
but
with
he's
those
trying.
stats. Obsessed with those stats. You just see him every interview. Even when he was like delivering Amazon gifts, he mentioned about someone missing and him missing out on the assist. So I think he does really think about those numbers, and he does need a few. And even with that assist for Haaland, you know, wouldn't he 6 months ago? Wouldn't he have tried to score that? I mean, you know, it was the right thing to do, and it was
Rich, he
very
got
sensible.
slated by some people
But
for not shooting.
nine times out of 10, the midfielder would have taken the shot there.
I've
Even
read
though
that today.
Pep would have loved him, because Pep wants the certain chance, and so Pep would have wanted him to pass to Haaland for 100% goal. But it did show, in a way. Did it show composure, or did it show a lack of confidence? I don't know.
Exactly, you can't.
We don't know.
What I mean? It's like, hang on, you can't. You just twisted it.
Yeah. Well, no, I'm saying I don't know. I'm saying that you'd think that is a goal that the midfielder scores, but he doesn't. But you can't slag him for that or congratulate him for it, because you don't know why he did it.
He miskicked it and he went to Haaland's foot. Should we just say that? It's easier. I don't know.
He glanced a couple of times at Haaland, so I think it was very obvious on his mind that he was going to square it. And I actually have a lot of respect for Jack Grealish, because it would have been so easy for him to be thinking to himself in that situation, here is a very scoreable opportunity. Here's my chance to shut everybody up by
in
putting
front
this
of the
into
City
back of the
fans
net.
as well.
And instead he took the correct option instead and
Yeah.
did what was right for the team rather than what was right for himself.
And
So I have a lot of respect for that.
And I think you're right, because we go back and we look at Real Madrid, and we had Mahrez being in the same situation and deciding to go for it, not pass it. Jack did what we bemoaned Riyadh for not doing last year, which again did that cost us a Champions League final.
I think at the end of the day, we signed Erling Haaland, and Haaland's job for Manchester City is to not have many touches. His job's to be in the right place at the right time to put the ball into the back of the net. So if you've got the option of having Haaland there to put the ball into the back of the net, surely your job as a creative player is to make sure he gets that service, which, even if it's just a simple pass across the box for him to tap the ball in, that's Haaland's job to do. And my job, or Jack Grealish's job in that instance, would be to give him that ball.
If we're talking about Jack being the Bernardo replacement, look at Bernardo's numbers for assists and goals. I mean, they're not amazing for City, if we're brutally honest. He's in that midfield to do a job that Pep wants, and he does it at a brilliant level.
It's because Jack's on the wing. Because he's part of that front three, everyone sees that. Because I keep saying it, every City fan, a lot of City fans are going back to Sane, Aguero, Sterling. We don't play that style anymore. We don't play this explosive, attacking, bang, bang, bang from either wing.
Yeah.
And it's now got Haaland. It's changed.
The funny thing is, though, when we did have Sterling, Sane, Aguero, Sterling, the amount of times City fans spent the whole time slagging off Sterling for missing sitters and being no good. I always disagreed. I always rated Sterling incredibly, but Sterling got slagged off by a lot of City fans for the entire time he was at the club. And even in seasons when he had 40 goals and assists, he got slagged off. And Sané had a lot of very, very poor games for City. I think Sané had more potential than any of the other players we've had in the last 10 years. I think Sané could have been up there with, becoming the next Ronaldo or something. I thought he had finishing ability, he had pace, he had absolutely everything. But he had game after game for City where he didn't track back, he made sloppy passes, he didn't affect the games. And I do think we look sometimes with rose-tinted glasses at Sané and Sterling in their great games and compare it to, say, Grealish and Mahrez not playing well today. But there are games today we've played this season where we've been phenomenal, and Grealish or Foden, they've had some great games. And there were games when Sterling and Sané played where we were terrible. So I think we do need to be careful not to get too rose-tinted.
Anyway, we've spent a bit too long. I'm going to move on to January. Because I know, Rich, you wanted to, Ozzy, you wanted to mention this. Let us know, CMC. I don't know what he's tweeted out lately. Do you see City doing any kind of business in January? Or are we believing Pep on this, Jay, that nope, doors closed, nobody's in?
I think it's always with Manchester City with the transfer market, it's always if the right player is available. I don't see us doing any business in January because most of the time teams don't want to depart with players mid-season, and Manchester City like to sign players who are seasoned to be either already fantastic players or are on the verge of becoming fantastic players. So to lose top talent in any team, they don't want to let that go mid-season. So I don't see Manchester City signing anybody in January for the first team. I do see City continuing with their roots of what they've been doing. I don't know if you've been keeping up to date in the outside of the transfer window, where Manchester City's been signing players for the academy and bringing players in. They've been targeting a lot with homegrown players, so I can see Man City just continuing to plod around signing the 15, 16, 17-year-old lads and bringing them into the academy and settling with what they've got, which is selling no players and signing no players, unless, of course, a good offer comes in for any of the players. But I'm not aware that there's any City players that are currently open to leaving Manchester City. I don't see anyone signing any of City's players in January, and because of that, I don't see us adding any players either.
Well, we've just bought someone. There you go. What a segue into the January window that was. This is just about Fabrizio Romano 2 minutes ago. Manchester City are set to trigger the release clause for Velez talent, or the Velez talent to be Maximo Perón worth $8 million.
And that's quite interesting as well, because actually I've forgotten his name, but the Argentinian player who's been talked about a lot for obviously linked to Liverpool of late.
Enzo Fernandez.
Yeah. No, I don't mean that. But what I'm saying is that the guy that has just been tweeted out by Faro, he was going to set to be taken by is it Benfica? That what's his face?
Benfica's. Yeah.
So that was going to be Benfica's replacement player.
Was that?
So that's quite interesting that City have snapped this young player up from underneath Benfica, because they are about to lose Fernandes, aren't they? Whether it's this January or the summer. So I think that's quite interesting that City have kind of snatched this young player who is seen as a really good talent.
He could be loaned to Benfica quite easily.
Yeah.
Rich, I said this last night. City don't turn down 20 million euros in the summer and then 3 months later go and drop under the 20 million.
No, we're talking about this young lad Peroni.
Oh, I thought you meant we were doing.
Yeah, no, he could be. If Enzo Fernandez goes, apparently Benfica are insisting on 120 million euros for him. So I'd be surprised if on the back of a few good games for Benfica and a good World Cup, someone goes and spends 120 million euros on Fernandez. So he may not be going. But I think we obviously looked at Fernandez before, and perhaps we think we should have signed him for 20 million, and perhaps we're thinking this is the next one. We're not going to make the same mistake again.
Yeah.
Well, according to this, I have never heard of the file. I won't lie. I'm not going to pretend to know. Apparently, Maximum Perone is this is a quote from the Vélez Sarsfield manager Gabriel Heinze. Is that the former United fullback?
Yeah, ain't say.
Didn't know that. All right, and just I'll call him something else. If you want in a minute, the way he was when he played against us. He says Peroni plays a deep lying playmaker. The left football is. So it sounds like he's a left-sided playmaker.
Yeah.
So we'll say. Jude, I know you did something on him this morning. I didn't catch that, Jay. Jude Bellingham. I know we've talked about this £100 million fee for Grealish. We now spoke to a lot of City fans, and I've said, what are your doubts on Jude Bellingham? They've all come back with the price of like this. Oh, because it's over 100 million. It's like this Jack Grealish fees just put every single player off 100 million that comes near City now.
Well, the rumor is that actually he's going to be sitting down with Dortmund when he comes back before their first game, and he's going to be talked about his future, and they're going to see if whether or not. I think the price tag is negotiable because I think it's more down to where Jude feels he wants to go. At the moment, I think that it is between Real Madrid, City, and Liverpool. I think Dortmund are kind of flexible. I don't think they're going to completely get the 150 they may want for him. I think if Jude says, "This is a team I want to go to," as long
I
as
love
it's
that.
above the 100 mark, I think that's a possible selling. So I do think this will come down to Jude's decision because he has got the option of where he goes.
What do you think, Jay? What are you?
I definitely don't think it'll be as high as 150 million euros to bring him in. At the end of the day, the amount of money that Dortmund have got, the fact that they missed out on a lot of money with Erling Haaland with this release clause, I think a good sized offer could be used to negotiate with them to bring Jude Bellingham in. I do think we are probably looking at, in terms of pounds, I reckon we are probably looking at north of 80. You're probably looking towards 90 to 100 million pounds to in a flat transfer fee to potentially bring Jude Bellingham in. There's all kinds of complications with the transfer, mainly other interest from other clubs. We've seen what City are like when it comes to negotiations with transfers. If Real Madrid, Manchester United, Liverpool come along and are prepared to offer crazy money, Manchester City don't tend to get involved with a negotiation battle. It's a little bit different with Haaland, and it was different because we had the release clause. We didn't have to negotiate the price. With Bellingham, we're going to have to negotiate the price. And if there is a club out there that's willing to pay more money than Manchester City are, then we're probably going to struggle to get this one over the line. But I am quite confident we can bring Bellingham in. If we do want him, I am confident that a phone call from Pep Guardiola to Jude Bellingham and a phone call from Erling Haaland following that phone call from Pep Guardiola would be enough to turn his head to say, actually, I want to go to Manchester City. I think the only thing holding back Jude Bellingham would be the guarantee of playing matches, because at the moment, in my opinion, he walks into Liverpool's midfield, in my opinion, and he'd be a regular starter for them. Whereas with Manchester City, where's he going to fit in? To me, it'd take one of Bernardo or Gundogan. It might even take both of them to potentially leave to open that gap up for Bellingham to be a regular starter at Manchester.
And I think that almost Pep would need to have that conversation with him and turn that into a positive. Because for me, you go to Liverpool, you're learning off Henderson and James Milner. If you go to City, you're learning off De Bruyne and Gundogan. And I don't think there are two, and Bernardo, I don't think there's better attacking midfielders in the world than City to learn from. So I think what it has to almost be sold as a positive. You come in, we're going to help you ease into the side. We're not just going to put you in there and chuck you in, and we're going to let you know you're coming in to replace De Bruyne, Gundogan, and they're going to help you for a year. So I think you turn that into a positive. And I think the other thing City have to do is, I think our strength for Bellingham is now. It's not in 6 months. At the moment, Liverpool do not necessarily have the money to spend. FSG are trying to potentially sell. They don't know whether they're in the Champions League next year. So anyone going to Liverpool is taking a chance of Europa League. They're also taking a chance Liverpool don't have that money to spend now. And so there's a doubt. And I think there's a bit of that in Madrid as well, because Madrid are still not sure whether they want Mbappe or not. And if they go for Mbappe, that's a €1 billion deal probably. So anything they do financially is only going to be able to be done when they've made up their mind we're not getting Mbappe. So I think in a way, if City really want Bellingham, whether he comes in January or he stays for 6 months at Dortmund, I think we will need to act. I think we'll need to act now, because I think in the summer, PSG may have made peace with Mbappe, and Madrid may have a huge war chest. Liverpool may have been bought out by someone with a lot more money than FSG. United may have got Champions League football and got money So I think we need to act now because we are in the strongest position now. We might not be in the summer. We
I
don't know.
can't see
Reactive.
United coming into this, if I'm honest. I mean, the top three clubs are Rail, us, and Liverpool, because those are the clubs that make
So
sense.
I'll see a question for you. In June, if United got top 4 and Liverpool didn't, and United got bought out by, an oligarch, do you think that United offering $500,000 for Champions League football would not be better than Liverpool offering 300K for Europa League football?
No, because it can still come to us.
But I still
I think he's saying if it's a choice
Yeah.
between United or Liverpool.
I think
Okay, right,
yeah. But I think
I get that, but I still think, if you want that ambition, you look at United and they're a mess. I'm sorry, I don't care how well they think they are doing.
I
right
second
now.
that. I absolutely second that.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm the total opposite. I think they're on the comeback quietly.
no.
I just think if you're a young upcoming talent, particularly if you're homegrown and you're English and you get an offer from top Premier League clubs and one of them's Manchester United, I wouldn't be touching it with a barge pole. I look at how they've handled other top talents, including
look at
Jadon
Sancho.
Sancho. It's been awful. It's been absolutely awful. I've been looking at that and thinking, absolutely no way.
Do you know what it is with United, mate?
United have got a long way to go. They've got a long way to go. And you can say, Martin, yes, they're quiet underdogs. They can slip into the top 4. Yeah, possibly. But they've had a decade of just being mismanaged from every single level, and they've got to have a big push towards trying to get to win the Premier League, let alone staying in the top 4.
I'm not saying they win the Premier League. I'm saying
no,
that
but that's what I'm hearing, though.
Force.
I mean, you hear on. I mean, I was listening to Talk Sport just yesterday. And you had the former Aston Villa player. I can't remember his name now.
Bonhalor.
That's the one.
Yeah.
And he was saying that, United, with the players they've got, they should be challenging for the Premier League. And I'm thinking, really? I don't care about who they've got. They've had brilliant players on the pitch for a long time. They've still not been able to do anything with it.
Yeah, but I think you perhaps underestimate or overestimate how hard it is to change. I'll call Newcastle here. Newcastle, 12 months ago, were a basket case of a club. They were, hadn't they won 1 out of 14 games? They were bottom comfortably.
Guaranteed to go down.
With a good manager and a bit of time, in 12 months, Newcastle, I don't think they're really Premier League contenders, but on paper at the moment, in third place, pretty much level with us, they're contenders for the Premier League. And that's happened in 12 months. And I think we need to be very careful. If Ten Hag is a good manager and he is the right manager, I think we need to be careful not to be too arrogant that they don't have the resources to turn things around quite quickly. Good manager, a bit of form and some good signings, and they are a threat.
Alex Johnson has just made a comment which I agree with. They are still a League One side at times. The way they play. No, I'm sorry, Martin, but it's the truth, because
it's not true.
It is, because they played a Nottingham Forest team that are completely down and out, and they suddenly think they're back. I mean, how many times have we heard this from United, where they get a great result, it leads to another great result, and then they meet someone like City or Liverpool, and they completely just go back to where they were before. I'm sorry, but it's about consistency. We've shown it. Liverpool have shown it. Arsenal are currently showing it. Until United show it, I'm sorry, but I'm not believing they're back. I'm not saying
they're beating Arsenal. They're beating Liverpool.
Yeah, and no one's saying
this is what I'm saying. They are beating those now.
Ozzy, we're not saying they're back. What I was saying was, if they get top 4, and they only get top 4 if they get that consistency. If they get top 4 and they're back in the Champions League and they're looking like they're a threat to win the title, they are a club that will be hard to go up against in transfers, because they can pay. They are, if they were good, they are the richest club in world football.
I agree with you
comfortably. And so
But
we
I think
can't
what I'm
be
trying to say,
arrogant. I
though,
think they're always going to be where they are.
no. But what, I agree with you on the point of that United will pay more money. They've shown that with the likes of players in the past. But what I'm saying is, and I think Jay was agreeing with me in some respects on this, is that it's the allure of the club now. United are not seen as the club that you really want to go to. If you want to earn a good amount of money, fair enough. But if you want to win the league, you want to potentially win the Champions League, the FA Cup, the Carabao Cup, you come to City. You don't go to United.
No, I agree. No, I agree with that. And you and Jay are spot on. At the moment, yeah.
That's true today, but will it be true in a year?
That's
Will it
my
be true in
point,
2 years?
as Andrew said earlier on. If United and Liverpool get these buyouts, and I think Liverpool spending money at the minute is a sign, I think that could be sooner than expected, because Liverpool are now suddenly starting to shift money around, which tells me there's something in the offing on sales. And United are getting offers. They get taken over by the right people and they bat them, then, like Rich said, in 12 months, that could easily all turn back round again.
But it is still very if, buts, and maybes, because you have to have
It's
the
not
right
because they
owner.
will get bought out, though. That's the thing, they will.
It depends, though, Martin, because I mean, as much as no, because it does, because you look at the likes of
they're the biggest club in the world still.
Yeah, what I'm saying, Martin, is that they are the biggest club in the world. I'm not denying that, but what I'm saying is that they may be looking still for investment, not actually to completely be bought out, because at the moment United still make a hell of a profit that the owners, that the Glazers still get.
Yeah, I think one thing that does make United's takeover hard is the Glazers apparently are looking at about $7 billion for the deal. But if you actually look at all the economic valuations that a businessman would apply, you know, they come out between 1 and 4 billion, depending on what measure they use. And so if they're really looking at that, you've got to have a very irrational bidder. You've got to have someone who has 3 billion to throw away, because they're, you know, and that not many bidders or state actors, unless you've got some Elon Musk mad billionaire who is a massive United fan and is prepared to pay double their worth, which doesn't usually, most people don't become billionaires by doing that, then United could have a problem. I think Liverpool seem to be more realistically asking for their value. But Liverpool, you know, what we've held over Liverpool in recent years has been, you know, we've won slightly more, and we've, you know, arguably been a bit braver in the transfer market. If Liverpool got taken over and suddenly had more money to throw at things than us, then, you know, they'd be a massive threat, because, you know, we can't use the fact that Liverpool's a hellhole against them, because all the players live in Cheshire anyway. So, you know, and, you know, we can't necessarily say we're miles better than Liverpool, because they have been neck and neck with us for years. So and this is why I just think with Bellingham, if we really want him, we act now, because we have got all those advantages. We are miles better than United at the moment. We are in a better position than Liverpool. No one thinks we're not going to get the Champions League. Liverpool and United could miss out on it. Real Madrid, uncertainty of Mbappe. And all I was saying, Ozzy, is in June, United and Liverpool could both be in the Champions League with us. They could have both been taken over and have tons of money. Madrid could have decided not to get Mbappe, and suddenly we've got 3 teams going for him hard or harder than us, and which I don't think we have now. So I think we should act and try and get it done. Let him stay till June, but we need to act whilst we've got the cards.
Can you see that, Jay? Bellingham coming now. I don't see Bellingham moving till June. I can see a deal being agreed privately. Like, you know, at Haaland, that was kind of agreed February, March time.
It takes so long to get a transfer sorted, and it takes people when they see a transfer. This, we're talking one of, if not the biggest transfer of the summer potentially, and a transfer of that magnitude is just so
one of the biggest
difficult to get done. Honestly, with the price of money that's involved, we are talking here possibly the biggest ever transfer involving an English football player,
Mm.
we'll be looking at certainly top
That's true.
5
Well,
biggest
that's true, that.
transfers of all time in terms
Yep.
of its fee. So a deal like that doesn't get struck in days or weeks. It will take months. And I would be amazed if Manchester City right now, after the performances of Jude Bellingham at the World Cup, are not in contact with Borussia Dortmund. I've seen it time and time again being reported. City's relationship with Borussia Dortmund right now is at an all-time high. And it's at a high because of how we handled the negotiations with Erling Haaland. We acted quickly, we acted promptly, we was professional in that transfer, and relations are very good. Relations are the same here for Jude Bellingham. And if Manchester City, I firmly believe, if Man City want Jude Bellingham, Man City can go out there and blow everybody else out of the water and make that happen. I think the biggest asset Manchester City have, everyone always goes on about money, and money is a huge factor. But I think there's one thing that's even bigger than that we've got over Liverpool, we've got over Manchester United, is Pep Guardiola. And as I was mentioning before, if Pep Guardiola makes that call, I don't care if United are willing to offer Jude Bellingham £1 million per year. If Pep Guardiola makes that call and says to Jude Bellingham, I want you in our midfield, you will be starting in our midfield, Jude Bellingham will sit up, he will listen, and he will take on board what Pep has to say, and he'll sign for Manchester City.
Yeah, I mean, there is something that's been talked about in the chat, and it's been for the last hour or so. It's been rumoured that actually there may be a secret release clause for Jude of 60 million. He's only just
I've not
been.
Heard that. I think that's.
It came out yesterday. Is as 60 mils, well, 65 bullet, as long as paid in one instalment.
Yeah.
As long as it's in one foul swoop. So no sort of amortization of.
So Barcelona won't be signing
Barcelona
for
have
them.
no chance then, because I don't even think, I'll be honest with you, I think that even knocks Real Madrid out the running. Don't think Real Madrid can slap 65 down in one big swoop.
Well, they've just spent. They've just done that for the Brazilian kid, haven't they?
So, I don't think. I think. To me, if that's true, and we don't know, it was rumored from Fabrizio, it was in the Daily Mail, it was Sam Lee mentioned it, a few other.
Mate, if that's true, Borussia Dortmund need to have a long, hard look at their policy with these release clauses. 55 million Haaland and 65 million pound Bellingham. They're doing their business all wrong.
I'll tell you what, though.
To be fair,
they had no choice with
Haaland.
They had no choice with Haaland, but Bellingham perhaps they did.
Do you know who I follow on Bellingham? Jan Agerfjortov.
I knew you were going to say that.
He was the guy who was literally following Haaland all the way. He was following it that much. He was in the documentary with him.
Yeah, well, he's very close to Haaland and his dad. You know, he's the Norwegian, media when it comes to football. And the interesting thing is, apparently Bellingham is, you've seen the Haaland documentary and all the talk about it. Haaland went down and he came up with his, I don't know how many it was, 6 or 7 categories and then he ranked all the teams. So it was like, who's the best? Who am I going to be in the best team with? Who needs a striker the most? What city do I want to live in? Who's paying the most money? And who's the best manager? And he ranked all the teams, and City topped it. I think it was actually Bayern second and Madrid third or something, according to Fjortov. And apparently Bellingham's doing the same. So why doesn't Haaland save him time and give Bellingham Haaland's lists? I mean, they're going to apply.
I don't think you can knock out Liverpool because Klopp's still
Mitch, do you know what though? The best manager in the world for midfielders, possibly of all time, is Pep.
Yeah.
Pep's game is based around playing, a midfielder in goal. And Liverpool midfielders, we said it before, Mike, Liverpool midfielders are normally looking in the air as the ball's pumped up to the fullbacks over their heads. So I don't know.
I love that analogy when you use that.
And who do you learn from? You can go and learn from Henderson, or you can learn from Gundogan and De Bruyne.
I don't know what Alex is on about, but when did I write us off for Saturday to not win?
Oh, I think you'd made a
Am
joke
I?
at the beginning about how they
Yeah.
haven't won since October.
Oh, right. Oh, so, right, yeah. I was joking. Alex, if you're watching on rerun, I was joking. I hope you get that later on, mate. I was kidding.
But I
There was
think
a bit of my sense of humour coming out.
back to the transfer thing, I think one thing where, and it ties in with this, Rick Ellis, one thing where I thought we would have to act in January was signing a fullback. I really thought that was an absolute glaring. But I do think that even in just 3 or 4 games, Rico Lewis has probably made me not like I felt probably in November that we had to sign a fullback. I now kind of feel, well, if Rico Lewis is named right back and we play Ake left back in quite a few of our Premier League games, that doesn't scare me. That actually, I think that's okay. So my biggest worry has always been how important Kyle Walker was to us. And if Kyle Walker gets injured, we can't play Cancelo if Walker's injured because none of our other fullbacks have that tactical expertise to really allow him that freedom. But now Rico Lewis has come in and even in a few games shown what he has. That makes me think maybe we can survive till the summer without signing a left back, which I didn't think 2 months ago. I thought we've got to go out and spend the money.
It depends though, because I mean, I'm still hearing that Pep isn't particularly happy with Gomez. There are rumours that he may be loaned out in January, to help his own career out, if nothing else.
I think Pep's not at all happy with Gomez. I think the fact he didn't get a look in against Liverpool says to me that Gomez is. Yeah, I think Gomez may well be on loan in January, but I think Pep may be happier with Rico Lewis and with Nathan Ake, and so maybe that becomes.
The only thing that worries me slightly about that is because we were talking about Rico Lewis at the beginning of the show, saying he needs time. He's only 19 years old. If we model Rico Lewis on Foden, it's going to take another couple of good seasons for him to actually become a regular in this team. So I still think we're probably going to have to go out and get at least another left back.
I think we will, but I'm talking about January versus June. I've heard that we are in, very serious conversations with Red Star. No, not sorry, Red Star, Red Bull. I'm getting a bit 1990s there, thinking of Red Star Belgrade.
You mean RB Leipzig?
Leipzig. Sorry, yeah. I was thinking of Red Star Belgrade for some reason, and going back to 1991. But yeah, though Red Bull and Gvardiol, and I think we're obviously very, very seriously interested in him, and I suspect that's as a fullback, not as a centre back.
Do you reckon having a look at Nathan Ake potentially taking more long-term left back, and then have a look at, because he's left-sided centre back, isn't he, Gvardiol as well?
Do you know what?
Yeah, he can play both.
If we stop the season right now, and you're going to think I'm mad when I say this, when we've got KDB and Haaland, my player of the season right now is Nathan Ake. I have seen a guy, when he got signed, there was this 41 million quid. Well, we've overpaid. What we're doing here, it's. And all I've seen him do in the last 12 months is that on a trajectory of.
I agree with you on his play, but I don't think he's quite better than Erling Haaland on this season.
No, I'm not. I'm talking.
Or Kevin De Bruyne.
No, I'm talking about his overall. When I look at
he's good.
Anyway.
He's been very good.
Player. When I look at Haaland and I look at KDB, I expect that they are world class talents in there. When you look at Haaland, you look at KDB, world's best midfielder, world's best striker, really. You're not putting Nathan Ake in one of the world's best defenders. And that's what I mean by it. Nathan Ake, for me, has been an absolutely shining light in this season. To me, he's been so quiet with it, and his performances have been outstanding.
I'd say at the end of last season as well. I'd say for 22, Ake has stepped up for City.
I remember it was against Atletico Madrid in the quarterfinals when he got slotted in. I think he was playing left back, I remember thinking to myself when he started, and I was like, "Is this the correct decision? What are City doing?" He put in a phenomenal performance over both legs, and he's not really looked back since. He's looked really good.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, I do think he needs to, if he's going to get a lot of football, it does need to come at left back a lot. You know, and it's, you know, I think Ake, if we're playing Rico Lewis or Cancelo right back, Ake left back makes sense because they slot forward and Ake becomes the left centre back of the three for the game. And I think that's perfect for him. So, and I think, yeah, but I think that will be probably more than playing left centre back because I still think Emerick Laporte's the best left centre back in the world. And therefore, Ake is not going to get picked in the biggest games ahead of Laporte.
I look at him though. I think he's took over now as the number one centre back or the number one defender for Netherlands. I think he's ahead of Virgil van Dijk.
Yeah,
no,
carried
I'm
Van
talking
Dijk.
about the way he's gone over the last 12 months. He's just completely gone up on levels for me. Not at just club level, but at international level. And that takes some doing. You know, he's consistent across the board of how good he's been. Gavardio, Jay, are we really going to drop another 100 million? Are we just throwing 100 million pounds around here? Like it's just.
I mean, there's money there to be spent by Manchester City. The net spend was so good in the summer that if Man City wanted to go out there in January and splash cash on any player to bring somebody in to either shore up the defence or, you know, chuck a winger out, because I know Rafael Leao's been getting linked with City as well from AC Milan. If City wanted to go out there and spend a lot of money in January, then they do have the option to be able to do so. I think this is a classic case of Man City not putting all their eggs into one basket and actually being interested in a wide variety of players. But there's got to be more in this other than just Manchester City being interested. There's got to be a reason why Manchester City are being linked with dynamic, wide attacking players, why we're being linked with a player like Jude Bellingham or Enzo Fernandez, and why we're being linked with Josko Gvardiol as well. There's got to be a reason why Manchester City are scouting these players, that they're looking at these players, they're interested in these players, and it's the big question now is whether City choose to do what we don't normally do, which is then to make a move and make a bid for these players. And if we do, then that definitely confirms what direction City are looking to go for in the transfer market. But I always say on my videos, there's a big difference between City having a look and being interested in a player and Manchester City actually making their move.
And yeah, I mean, Rafael is a player that I'd like to see City going for. I mean, I think he's a great attacking winger. I think he could bring a lot to City, if I'm honest. But I think you're right, Jay. I think you know, City will only go in and they will cast their net wide. But it is surprising because some of the players that are coming up, because for me, it's players that I think we could do with. I think we need. But it doesn't feel for me like we're being used either, just you know, for social hits.
Yeah, because normally our name just gets chucked out there at City. They're interested because they're a really good player. We're not going to sign them, but if we put Man City's name in there, then we can ask for more money. The agents can ask for more money and things like that.
Yeah.
The one, I must admit, the one I don't believe is Rafael. I think that's his agent. And I'll tell you why. A lot of City fans, I've heard a lot of talk in December about how on earth are we going to deal with Alvarez coming back? He's not getting any game time. He's now become a star of the World Cup, you know, number 9 for Argentina. How are we going to get him in the team? He's not getting enough football. And I think Cole Palmer's done a bit better than he gets credit for. I think he hasn't been clinical, a bit like Grealish, but he's actually done a better job. So I honestly don't think we are after Leao. I think clearly we're after Bellingham. I think we're crystal clear on that. But we know Bernardo might leave. De Bruyne is now comfortably past 30 and Gundogan is comfortably past 30 and Gundogan is starting to slow. So we know we need midfield engine, attacking midfield. And, you know, the Gvardiol ones, we haven't had a left back, you know, I'd say since Clichy or Kolarov almost. Some people would say we haven't had a left back since, you know, probably since Paul Power, you know, so, or Terry Phelan or someone. So I really think there's genuine interest probably in Gvardiol, and I think there's genuine interest in Bellingham. I'm not sure there's any interest in Rafael Leao from City. I think Pep's probably sitting there thinking, how am I going to keep Grealish, Mahrez, and Palmer happy when I'm starting Foden, Alvarez, and Haaland?
Alvarez. I was about
Yeah,
to say
no,
that.
I think Alvarez needs to get some starts.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from, Rich. I kind of agree you to a point, but I think the thing is that I think with Haaland having some niggles, plus the amount of games that are going to come thick and fast, I just feel that he will get the game time. But I also think that Pep is looking at different options, because we haven't got that pace. Do you know what I mean? And that is something that I think Raphael could bring. Is a different option that we don't have.
Yeah.
And we haven't had since the likes of Sane and Sterling.
Yeah.
So that's why I can understand it. I'm not saying it's definitely going to happen, but I can understand why we're being linked.
But if we're doing that, I'd rather go and spend 30 million and get Sané back, to be honest. It cost a third of the money. I think his ceiling's higher. And, the fact he comes back and watches City whenever he can. He's obviously regretting the fact he ever left. So,
he's used to the city, he's used to the surroundings, and he's used to the team. So it'd be easier for him to adapt for a cheaper price for City. But I don't see us going for Leroy Sané.
Generally, you never go back. I mean, that's one of the rules of football. You don't go back. But if I'd rather him than Leao. I just
don't think we play that football anymore. And like you said, I think you bring in another winger, you stump in Cole Palmer, you've got Alvarez. The
thing for me though, Martin, is it's that left-hand side attack. We don't have it. That's what I'm saying. We have Sterling gone.
Foden and Grealish won't both go into the middle though.
Yeah,
it's about rotation, and we know how much Pep rotates, and that's why.
I know, but is Rafael Leao going to come and rotate? That's what I mean. It's hard if you're going to spend that kind of money. I think a lot of it with Grealish is they put him in because of the price tag as well. Sometimes it is you've got to play him. We spent this money. He's on 300 grand a week wages to our 350. You're gonna get Leao and Bellingham, they're going to come in on mastermind of wages. Yeah. They're all going to be on similar sort of wage level.
And Ozzy, I don't think
it becomes harder to rotate then.
That problem on the left doesn't stem, I don't think, from the players either. I think that problem on the left stems mainly from having Cancelo playing as a kind of left-sided number 10 from fullback and killing the space we have on the left. So in many ways, I think you put Leao on there, you'd still have some of the same problems that we have with Grealish and Foden.
I don't know, because in Portugal they play well together, so that's why I can see the link as well.
Yeah,
I'm just with it. I think the Alvarez. I think if you bring in somebody else, you're going to be stumping Alvarez a little bit, and then you got Cole Palmer.
Yeah, I want to see Alvarez. I want to see Alvarez get game time playing with Haaland. As a wide forward. Most of the time for the World Cup in Argentina, he wasn't really playing as a number 9. He was playing as a wide forward, and I think in the big Champions League games, his energy, his running, his pressing is going to be vital. In the Premier League, we're playing in half a pitch, and I think Alvarez's strengths probably disappear a little bit because he hasn't got that space to room, and there's 8 players across the back. But in the Champions League, that's when Gabriel Jesus was at his best, when we had space in open Champions League games. And I remember 2 games he had against Madrid. Was it the quarterfinals of the Champions League where Gabriel Jesus was the best player over those 2 legs, head and shoulders the best player of the 2 sides, because he had space and he pressed and he ran. And Alvarez, I think, judging by Argentina, has that even more than Jesus. He looks like he's like Jesus on amphetamines, the way he can run and press and everything.
Can I just say, by the way, anyone wants to know about, been saying it in the chat, James McAtee has scored an absolute belter tonight.
I'll have to check that
Blackpool.
out.
He's ran from one end of the pitch to the other and slotted it past the Blackpool goalkeeper. I know you'll love that, Jay. Oh, is it your brother who'll love it?
My brother will love it. I'm Blackpool born, me.
No, but I mean, your brother a Preston fan in terms.
He is, yeah.
You've got another channel, haven't you?
Yeah.
It's a lovely thing. I listen. I love McAtee. I love Palmer. It always worries me when I see youngsters go to Championship. That's what worries me of. It's the Championship.
It's funny, isn't it, though? For City, that's been a problem. For a lot of other clubs, you know, Kane and Beckham and all sorts of players went to the Championship for
Mason
loans.
Mount did it, didn't he, as well?
Yeah, a lot of other clubs have done it really well.
Yeah,
City
I know.
seems to have
It's
not
just with
done it
us.
as well.
When our players go to the Championship, you just don't seem to see him again.
He got a very good. He got a good goal Saturday as well.
I think all of ours are actually doing pretty well in the Championship at the moment. Actually, I've been keeping up with pace, and most of them are doing pretty well actually. So it may be a change.
Doyle scored with
Yeah,
his
but
first
you
touch
know,
on
100%
Boxing Day.
that Doyle's not coming back. You know, 100% that.
Yeah, I don't think it. McAtee maybe. You know, he got a good goal on Boxing Day.
I'd love McAtee, but I don't see where he goes.
Well, he's got a 6-year deal. So they're thinking of him. Definitely, they must be thinking of him.
We went Bellingham 5 minutes ago. We want Bernardo to stay. You want Rafael Leao. They're not going to come in and just sit him and bench them for 5 years.
But in 3 years' time, we're not going to have De Bruyne. We're not going to have Gundogan, and we're not going to have Bernardo. Yeah. So we are going to see that whole midfield rotate, and we'll probably want 4 or 5 players in those positions. So there's definitely, I mean, there's Grealish and Foden. Do they come in? Do we sign Bellingham? There's someone like McAtee, but we are going to need 4 or 5 players.
Well, Grealish is going to be hitting 30 by that time as well. So
yeah,
you know,
and we're not going to be spending 100 million on them all. So
yeah, no, I know what you're saying.
There is an opportunity.
I don't see McAtee sitting on his hands for 2 or 3 years.
No, and that's probably why he's on loan now. And he may go on loan to a Premier. You know, I wouldn't be massively surprised if they stay up. If you know, you don't see one of those deals with Southampton where they sign him for 20 and we can buy him back for 50 or something like that.
That's the problem. That's the problem. These youngsters are fantastic, but the competition is so strong at Manchester City. You have to be world class to get in. You know. We've seen Grealish, who was a superstar at Villa, the Villa man, who is struggling like hell at times. It's just not. And you've got to have, like Rodri said today, it is such a big level at City now. We are one of them powerhouses around Europe that demand the best. And sadly, that means some will not make it. You know, it's a sad state of affairs. Listen, no one more than me would love 11 young academy lads to roll out. I'd love it, but I know it ain't. You know, we're not 1998 anymore. I know that. The days of Jeff and Jim Whitley ain't happening. So
no, but I think the plan is that City want to, you know, and have had since the very beginning of the takeover, is they wanted to create their own La Masia. You know. And I think that is becoming more reality than not, because you are seeing some of these fantastic players, and yes, some of them may not make it at City, but they may still go on to have brilliant careers elsewhere. It doesn't mean, as you said though, you know, that City don't put a buyback clause, you know, like they have on a few of the players recently, and we don't see them come back. So we'll have to wait and see. But I mean, he's extraordinary talent. We've all bigged him up, and we'd all love to see him eventually come back to City.
Anyway, we're gonna end it there. Ozzy, have you got anything you want to say before I say a big thank you to Jay, who has been an absolute superstar for listening to us waffle on for 2 hours and giving up 2 hours of his time? Because trust me, Jay doesn't normally come and do this kind of thing for 2 hours.
Yeah, no, I've checked out Jay's channel, and I've got to say, you do a brilliant job, mate, and I appreciate you coming on tonight and supporting us. It means a great deal to the three of us, and I'm sure it means everything as well to the people watching. So thank you for coming on. Hopefully we haven't bored you too much, and hopefully you'll come back at some stage.
I've always come back on me. I like waffling, talking football is my hobby, so don't worry about that too much.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I will. Jay will always. But I listened to something Jay said about me about 10 days ago, 2 weeks ago, and it actually choked me up. Believe it or not, he doesn't know this, but I watched it, and
Well, don't embarrass the guy.
no, he said something very nice about me that I do thank him for. Don't agree with it because I think all City fans are the same, but Jay is a top bloke, and if you're not, all of you will be subscribed to Jay's channel, but if you're not, go and subscribe to his second channel as well. He's a top bloke, and I just want to
thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And sorry for
Appreciate
embarrassing you there, mate. But I
No
think you know the bit of me. I think you know the bit of me. And of course, you've got Rich and Ozzy who give up the time. Do appreciate Ozzy has a massive job, and Rich gets up at silly o'clock on the other side of the world to come and waffle you lot in the comments. And you're bored of seeing me. You saw me for 5-6 hours yesterday, and you got me another 2 hours tonight. Unlucky you lot. But I just can't thank all of you enough. You are all superstars. But big thank you to Jay, Rich, and Ozzy. And if you want to say anything before you leave, jump, go and swim in the pool, go shopping.
Actually, it was raining overnight, but it looks like the sun shines out.
Good.
So,
I hope it rains for the next 10 days on you.
I've got
you
a very
don't
good.
Send me any more swimming pools photos.
I'll probably be arguing about football all afternoon. So I've got one of my oldest mates coming over today, who's a Tottenham season ticket holder. So we'll probably be discussing, our record against Spurs. Whether Conte's any good. Will City win the Champions League? It'll be a lot of football waffle and a lot of wives and daughters raising their eyes and rolling their eyes and complaining.
There you go. Big thank Paul Hewitt, by the way. I've been watching him all night. Is an Everton fan, and he is absolutely took the banter, the humour, everything on his head. And I hope you enjoy the game on Saturday in some form of fashion. Trust me, we've all been there, mate.
Yeah. I'm not sure if I'll. I don't know what state I'll be in on. I think the kickoff's 2:00 on New AM.
Yeah, there is no post match on New Year's Eve.
Yeah,
I am telling everybody now. On New Year's Eve, there is no post match. We will do something New Year's Day. When New Year's Eve, no. New Year's Day, we will see you all in 2023. I will throw out some YouTube shorts from the ground as normal on New Year's Eve. I think you're going out, Jay. Did he say? Are you going on Saturday?
Yes.
Good lad.
Looking forward to it. Buzzing for it.
And they had Jay's brought the Mancunian way rule. Guests aren't allowed in the comments, but Jay will allow. Yeah.
Martin, you haven't noticed my 7 aliases that I've now got.
Why? What have you got? Who have you been as?
There's a few aliases on the chat, which is me, and you haven't spotted them.
You'll work it out. Don't worry, Martin.
Are you Paul Hewitt?
Are you calling me a Scouser? Don't start.
A friendly Scouser. These Evertonians. I don't know. Hang on a minute. Statler Sambas. See, that's going to bug me now all evening.
Yeah, there's one who's been around. There's one that's been around for months.
Anyway, Martin. On that note,
Ahmed Musa.
We could be here all night.
Are you Alec Johnson?
What you guess? One of them. One of them is Yusuf. Yeah.
Are you Yusuf? No.
Maybe not. You'll have to find out.
Because that means you wound everyone up for the last 2 years. Rich, naughty boy. We'll chat afterwards.
No.
Anyway, no, big thank you. I just want to say, have a lovely, happy New Year to everyone in 2022. I hope you have a wonderful 2023. We will see you next year from everyone on the channel. Have a wonderful New Year's Eve. Stay safe. Don't do anything silly. If you are going to drink, do it in sensibility. Look after yourselves. Don't want anyone, committing on from jail or prison or wherever you're going to be locked up. Like Rich, maybe. But yeah. Look, they're all guessing now who you are. Have a great. See, you've thrown me completely now.
They'll all be
They
wondering.
sat there going, "How unprofessional."
There'll be people. There'll be people doubting themselves. Blue Heart will be sat there going, "Am I really?"
No, I know
Blue
you're
Heart?
not Blue Heart.
Or is
I've been
or is
talking
Blue
to Blue
Heart?
Heart for about 4 years, 5 years. Blue Heart.
Oh,
was-
but I set this up years before I even knew you, Martin.
I've met Blue Heart.
Could have been
I've
in
been face to
disguise.
face with Blue
Can I
Heart.
ask you a question? Have you ever seen me and Blue Heart in the same room at the same time?
I've met
you
Blue
go.
Heart.
Was I there?
And you
though?
don't look like Blue Heart. I've actually met Blue Heart, so that wasn't the best one to pick. You're winding me up. Have a lovely New Year. We'll see you all on New Year's Day at some point with the Man City Everton post match. Thank you all for the support. Smash that like on your way out. If you haven't subscribed, please help us try and get to 1,000 subscribers. That would be amazing. And as we've always said, it is your channel, not ours. Have a lovely, lovely time. Big thank you to Jay. He's a superstar. Ozzy, you're brilliant. Rich, you're a pain in the ass. Right. Have a lovely time.
Good night.
And we'll speak to you all soon.
See you later.
Like a kipper.